Listen to the audiobook Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. Level B1. Oxford Reading University.
Part 1.
Mrs. Dashwood used to live in a big fancy house called Norland Park with her 3 daughters, Elinor, Marianne, and Margaret. Elinor was a very clever girl and often advised her mother on important matters. The middle sister, Marianne, had a very kind heart. She was a sensible, generous, and romantic girl. The youngest sister, Margaret, was cheerful and lovely and only 13 years old. Due to a series of events, Mrs. Dashwood had lost possession of the house. Now it was owned by her stepson, John, and his wife, Fanny. Fanny was an unpleasant and selfish woman. She made it clear that Mrs. Dashwood and her daughters were not particularly welcome in Norland Park. So, Mrs. Dashwood started looking for a cheaper house in the neighborhood to rent. At that time, Mr. Edward Ferrars, Fanny's brother, came to Norland Park to visit his sister. Soon, he and Elinor became close friends. It was obvious to everyone that they liked each other very much. Mrs. Dashwood was very pleased. Even though Edward was shy and not particularly handsome, he was an intelligent, kind young man. He came from a rich family, and his mother and sister intended for him to become a politician. However, Edward himself had no such ambition. All he wanted was a peaceful family life in a house of his own. Once, Mrs. Dashwood and Marianne sat in the living room talking. "Soon, Elinor will be married," said Mrs. Dashwood. "We'll miss her very much, but surely she will be happy." Marianne didn't say anything. "You look sad, my dear," noted Mrs. Dashwood. "Don't you like Edward?" "Well, I'm just confused," said Marianne. "He's very nice, but his eyes lack fire. He doesn't seem very interested in art or music, and he doesn't like romantic books. I would be unable to love a man who doesn't share my passions. Oh, Mother, men are so boring. Honestly, I doubt that I'll ever find the perfect one for me." "My dear, you're only 16, replied her mother, laughing. "Surely you'll find your happiness one day." In fact, Elinor was very attracted to Edward, but she was too shy to express her feelings openly. Moreover, she wasn't sure whether Edward felt the same about her. Then one day, Mrs. Dashwood received a letter from her relative, Sir John Middleton. He invited her to stay in his cottage that was located near his house in Devonshire. It was rather small, but perfectly suitable for Mrs. Dashwood and her daughters. So, the lady gladly accepted the offer. 2. When autumn began, the Dashwoods moved to Devonshire. Sir and Lady Middleton met them at their new home, Barton Cottage. Sir John was a very kind-hearted, hospitable man. His wife, on the other hand, was a proud, serious woman. One day, the Middletons invited the Dashwoods to dinner. Sir John had a lot of friends, and his house was crowded with people. After dinner, Marianne was asked to entertain the guests by playing piano in the living room. One man seemed especially interested in her performance. He was Colonel Brandon, Sir John's friend. Colonel Brandon was a silent and serious gentleman of approximately 35 years old. Several days later, a family friend told Mrs. Dashwood that the colonel was in love with Marianne. "That's silly," Marianne told her mother. "He can't possibly feel anything. He's so old." "But my dear, I'm 5 years older than him," laughed Mrs. Dashwood. "Do you think I should be dead by now?" "No, but at 35, one is unable to truly love anymore," replied Marianne. "I think Colonel Brandon needs a woman who would accept the duties of a nurse. This way, it would be a convenient marriage for both of them. She would take care of him, and he would support her financially." They were silent for some time. Then Marianne said, "By the way, Mother, I'm really worried about Elinor. We've stayed here for 2 weeks now, and Edward still hasn't come to visit her. It's all very odd. Elinor is so calm, so self-controlled. I can hardly understand anything." 3. Time passed, and soon the Dashwoods began to feel at home at Barton. One day, Marianne and Margaret decided to explore a nearby hill. Suddenly, it began pouring rain. The girls came running down toward their house, but Marianne slipped and fell to the ground. She injured her leg and couldn't walk. Luckily, a gentleman was hunting in a forest nearby. He noticed the poor girl and hurried to help her. He picked her up from the ground and carried her down the hill. Mrs. Dashwood was very surprised as a stranger entered the house, carrying Marianne in his arms. She looked him up and down and smiled to herself. The young man was incredibly handsome. "Thank you very much for saving my girl," Mrs. Dashwood told him. "May I know your name?" "It's Willoughby," he replied. "I live at Allenham. Please allow me to come tomorrow to check if Miss Marianne is all right." "Of course," said Mrs. Dashwood. "We'd be happy to see you again." Later, Sir John told them that Mr. Willoughby was a very pleasant, sociable young man. He lived with his aunt, an older rich lady. Mr. Willoughby was to inherit her house and money after her death. The following morning, Willoughby came to check on Marianne. He also came on the day after that. Then he started visiting the Dashwoods regularly. At first, he said that he was simply worried about Marianne's health. But soon, he stopped pretending. He came to spend all the time with her, to read, talk, and sing together. They had very much in common. They shared a passion for art and poetry, and had similar tastes in music. Marianne became more and more attracted to him. She could hardly sleep at night, looking forward to meeting Willoughby again in the morning. Her mother was fairly pleased with the state of things. Elinor, however, was sad. She felt really sorry for Colonel Brandon. Elinor was sure that he was in love with Marianne. But what chance did a shy, quiet, 35-year-old man like him have against a cheerful, handsome one of 25? 4. One day, Margaret saw Willoughby and Marianne walking together in the yard. He cut off a lock of her hair, kissed it, and stored it in his pocket. Margaret ran back to the house to deliver the exciting news to the rest of the family. Mrs. Dashwood and her daughters did not doubt that Willoughby and Marianne were engaged now. However, days passed, and Marianne still said nothing. Mrs. Dashwood and Elinor were very confused. Soon, the Dashwoods went to visit the Middletons, but Marianne decided to stay home. When Mrs. Dashwood and her daughters came back, they saw Willoughby's carriage in the yard. As soon as they entered the house, Marianne started crying and ran upstairs. Willoughby rose from his chair, looking very sad. "What happened?" asked Mrs. Dashwood worriedly. "I cannot come here anymore," he replied. "I talked to my aunt yesterday. She said that I must travel to London on business immediately. I've come to say goodbye." Then the man excused himself, got in his carriage, and drove away in a hurry. Elinor was very worried. Had Marianne and Willoughby had an argument? Or perhaps Willoughby had never had any intention of marrying her sister at all. It was very painful to think that Willoughby could be a dishonest man, so Elinor tried to convince herself that she was wrong. Marianne was heartbroken. She remembered from her favorite books that young girls always suffered very much in situations like this. Therefore, she decided to do the same. She refused to eat or talk to anyone for several days. All she did was play Willoughby's favorite songs on the piano and go for lonely walks where they used to walk together. But soon, there was no more room for sadness in her heart. Willoughby didn't send any letters, and she didn't expect them anymore. 5. One day, Elinor persuaded Marianne to go for a walk together. As they were going down the road, they saw a man riding toward them. "It's him!" exclaimed Marianne, and ran in his direction. Then she stopped sharply. She realized that the rider was not Willoughby. It was Edward Ferrars. She greeted him politely, trying to hold back her tears. Elinor walked up to them, and they started talking. Marianne was surprised to learn that Edward had been in Devonshire for 2 weeks already. Why hadn't he come to see Elinor during that time? Were they not in love? They went to Barton Cottage together. Mrs. Dashwood was very pleased to see the young man, but for some reason, he seemed upset. "So, Edward, does your mother still want you to become a politician?" asked Mrs. Dashwood. "I'm afraid so," replied Edward sadly. "She has very high expectations of me. She wishes for me to be great." "But you are not as ambitious," said Mrs. Dashwood. "I understand." "Yes," he said. "I never liked studying law. Instead, I was interested in religion. I even thought of becoming a priest. Like everybody else, I want to be happy, but I understand happiness in my own way. I know that greatness or money will never make me happy. I only want a quiet life and some simple, useful work." Since that day, Edward started visiting the Dashwoods regularly. One morning, they all were having tea together in the living room. Marianne passed a cup to Edward and noticed a ring on his finger. There was a little lock of hair in it. "Is this your sister's hair in the ring, Edward?" asked Marianne curiously. "But I thought her hair was darker." Edward's face turned red. He looked at Elinor quickly, then turned away. "Yes, you're right," he said. "The hair is Fanny's. It's darker than it looks." However, a moment was enough for Elinor to read the truth in his eyes. She realized that the hair was actually hers. But how had he managed to get it? She had never given her hair to him. "He must have taken it from me secretly," thought Elinor. Anyway, it was solid enough proof of his love for her. Now she understood that he only treated her coldly because of his problems with his mother. 6. Soon, Sir John invited the Dashwoods to his house. "I'd like to introduce you to someone," he said excitedly. "Two fine young ladies are staying at my house. I think you'll get along very well." The ladies were named Miss Anne and Lucy Steele. Anne was about 30 years old. She wasn't quite clever or lovely. Lucy was young and very pretty. She smiled all the time, but Elinor couldn't determine whether she really meant what she said. "How do you like it in Devonshire?" asked Anne. "I guess you didn't really want to leave Norland. I heard that you had plenty of handsome gentlemen there." "My God, Anne," laughed her sister unnaturally. "Can you talk about anything but men? You'll make a bad impression on the Dashwood ladies." The Steele sisters liked Marianne and Elinor very much, so the Dashwood girls had to meet with them at dinners and walk together every now and then. Once, during a dinner, Anne said to Elinor, "I've heard that your sister is engaged to a handsome gentleman. I'm so happy for her. I hope you will find your happiness soon, too. Or perhaps there is a special man already?" Sir John was sitting next to Miss Anne and heard their conversation. "Yes, his name is Edward Ferrars," he said quietly into Anne's ear, but everybody at the table heard him. "He's very dear to Miss Elinor." Anne turned to Elinor and shouted excitedly, "Oh, congratulations! He is such a nice gentleman. I know him very well." Elinor was very surprised. How did Anne know Edward? She wanted to learn more about it, but neither of the Steele sisters said anything else, and she didn't want to ask questions. 7. A few days later, Elinor and Lucy went for a walk together. Suddenly, Lucy turned to her and said, "Do you know Mrs. Ferrars personally?" "Fanny's mother?" asked Elinor in surprise. "No, I've never met her. But why are you asking?" Lucy was quiet for a moment, then said, I need your advice. You see, it is very likely that we will be related soon." "Are you marrying her younger son, Robert?" asked Elinor. "No," replied Lucy. "Not Robert, but his older brother, Edward." Elinor's face turned pale. "I understand why you're surprised," said Lucy. "Indeed, Edward and I decided not to tell anyone about it till the day of the wedding. In fact, we've been engaged for 4 years already. I've known him since childhood. Back then, we used to play together at my uncle's house all the time." She took a small picture from her pocket and showed it to Elinor. It was a portrait of Edward. Elinor's heart sank within her. "He gave me this picture, and I gave him a lock of my hair in exchange," Lucy explained. "He still wears it in his ring. Poor Edward, I simply can't reject him. It would be too cruel. But his mother has such great plans for his future life. She will never let me be his wife." She closed her eyes with her hand and started crying, but Elinor didn't feel sorry for her at all. Soon Lucy left, and Elinor was left alone, deeply in thought. She was sure that Edward was attracted to her, not Lucy. He couldn't possibly love such a silly, selfish girl for more than 4 years. Perhaps his engagement was just a mistake. Elinor felt really sorry for him. Even if she had lost her happiness with him, she was going to get better after some time. Meanwhile, Edward was forced to spend the rest of his life with a woman he didn't love. Later, she understood why Lucy had told her about their secret engagement. She was jealous and determined to have Edward for herself. This was her way of warning Elinor to keep away from him. 8. In the winter, a family friend invited the 2 older Dashwood sisters to visit her at her house in London. Elinor did not want to go. She knew that Edward and Lucy were going to be there, and she wanted to avoid meeting them. Marianne, on the other hand, was very excited to go. Of course, she hoped to see Willoughby there. Eventually, Mrs. Dashwood persuaded Elinor to accept the offer, and the 2 went on their journey. Upon their arrival, Elinor sat down to write a letter to her mother. Marianne also took a pen and paper. "I'll write to Mother," said Elinor, "so you don't have to." "I'm not writing to Mother," replied Marianne, and turned away. "She must be writing to Willoughby," guessed Elinor, smiling to herself. Indeed, they are engaged. Both letters were posted immediately. Marianne was very nervous for the rest of the day. In the evening, a knock came on the door, and she jumped up from her chair and ran toward the hall. "He's here!" she cried, preparing to throw herself into the visitor's arms. But then she saw that it was Colonel Brandon. Marianne was so disappointed that she immediately ran out of the room. "Is she ill?" asked the colonel worriedly. "No, she has a headache, that's all," replied Elinor. She was embarrassed by her sister's behavior. "I'm deeply sorry," he began, looking her directly in the eyes. "I don't mean to be impolite, but tell me, is Marianne really going to marry Willoughby? Do I really have no chance with her?" Elinor felt very sorry for him. I am aware of their relationship," she said carefully. "Even though they haven't announced it openly, I tend to think that they are going to marry soon." He listened to her silently, then said, "I wish Marianne all the happiness in the world, and hope that Willoughby will become the kind of man who truly deserves her." 9. Days passed, but no letters came from Willoughby. Marianne was extremely upset. She had lost interest in music, parties, and dresses. Elinor made a lot of effort to prepare her for the upcoming dance event at the house of their friends. When the girls arrived at the party, Marianne sat down on a chair and refused to dance or talk to anyone. Suddenly, she saw Willoughby among the guests. He was talking to some lovely young lady. "It's him!" cried Marianne in excitement, and moved sharply toward him. Elinor caught her by the arm and said, "Please, be calm." Finally, Willoughby noticed them. He walked up to them and greeted them politely. "What does it mean?" said Marianne. "Didn't you get my letter?" His face changed expression immediately. It was clear that he was very uncomfortable. "I did," he replied. "It was very nice of you to tell me about your arrival in London."
Stay with us for part 2.
Your support means a lot to us. Hit the like button if you enjoy our audiobooks and leave a simple comment. It will help others to see our videos. And here's another great story in English for you